When we looked at words in the previous section of the book, we saw that not all words appear in all varieties of English. Some words are dialect words, that is, they appear in the speech of only some speakers, particularly speakers from a region, say, or a particular social group. That's just as true of phonology. Dialect variation takes place not only in the lexis of particular dialects, but also in the phonology. So we're now going to have a short look at dialect phonology, particularly the dialect phonology of English. Dialects can and do vary on the basis of their sound system, and there's a considerable interest, of course, in studying dialects. Think back again to My Fair Lady and the capacity of Henry Higgins to spot people from different parts of London just on the basis of their pronunciation. The way that's done, of course, is to say, well, not everybody sounds the same, and groups of people from different areas and different social classes sound the same, whereas people from other areas and other social classes sound different. So let's have a look at the ways in which sound systems can differ from each other. First of all, one dialect of English may have a different phoneme inventory from another. That is, not all the phonemes are exactly the same. Obviously, if all the phonemes were different, well, we wouldn't be able to understand each other. We wouldn't, in fact, be speakers of English. But it is the case that sometimes a dialect will have a phoneme that another dialect doesn't. In Scots English, the two words lock, as in what happens when you close the door, and loch, which is the Scots word for lake, are a minimal pair. What's the difference? Well, the final phoneme of the second word isn't a voiceless velar stop the way it is for people who don't speak Scots English. It's a voiceless velar fricative. Loch. That particular sound isn't used in other varieties of English as a phoneme, but it is in Scots English. The opposite situation comes about when, instead of having a phoneme that other dialects of English don't, there is a merger between phonemes, and a particular phoneme disappears, and one dialect ends up with fewer phonemes. In New Zealand English, for example, there has been a process going on now quite a long time where the distinction between here and hair is disappearing, and for a number of New Zealand speakers, particularly younger ones, there isn't a distinction. Those two words are pronounced in the same way, they're heard in the same way. That leads to jokes and puns at hairdressers, and the names of salons sometimes make use of that. In one case, the name of the salon was Why Not H-A-I-R, why not here, as opposed to hair. Well, if there's no difference, why not here? In other words, why not come here for your hair? Well, that's a spectacular difference when the inventory itself is different, but sometimes there are differences in where a particular phoneme appears in a word. We've seen that it's possible for phonemes to have various kinds of distributions. In some cases, that distribution may be defective. Well, one of the most wide-ranging cases of differing distributions is in the case of the phoneme R. In all English words, in all English dialects, R appears before vowels. So run and read and write always have an R in front of them, no matter what dialect you speak. But that isn't the case for R after vowels. Rhotic dialects, as they're called, have R both before and after vowels. For example, in North American English, the word C-A-R is pronounced car. Car, there is an R at the end of that word. Whereas in standard British English, the word is pronounced car. there's no R there. So a rhotic dialect has R both before and after vowels, whereas a non-rhotic dialect has it only before vowels. Well, the distinctions to be made here between rhotic dialects and non-rhotic dialects are very interesting, because sometimes the distinction is geographic. Most dialects of American English, as I suggested, are rhotic, but in some of the southern states they're non-rhotic. So people in Alabama might say car, car, not car. Or it may be that this is a statistical matter, that they're less rhotic than people in other areas. In New York City, being more or less rhotic is a social matter. If you're further up the social scale, then you're more rhotic. If you're less up the social scale, further down the social scale, then you are less rhotic. So middle class speakers will say car more often, whereas working class speakers will say car more often. In the UK, Irish and Scots and southwestern dialects are rhotic. So Scots will say car, and middle class London dialects will say car. So there it's regional. Then there are realization differences. We saw that a phoneme is realized as different kinds of allophones. Sometimes that's positional, as we saw with complementary distribution, one phoneme being realized as a particular allophone in a particular place, and the same phoneme being realized as another allophone in another place. But dialects can also differ in how a phoneme is realized. Okay, so in Caribbean English, the vowel in cat is often pronounced further back than it would be in standard British or American English. So the word man, man, sounds more like man, man. How you doing, man? That's a realization difference. The phoneme is still there, but it's pronounced in a different way. Even the phoneme R, which we've just seen earlier, in Scots English it's often trilled, far and car, whereas in standard British English, where it's pronounced, it's never trilled. Then there are selectional differences where a particular phoneme appears in certain words in one place and another phoneme appears in other places. So in standard British English, at least conservative standard British English, the word city used to end in an I phoneme. City, city. The two vowels, I at the beginning and I at the end, the two syllables, two phonemes, they were the same phoneme. But in many other dialects, city has an E phoneme at the end, that is the I with the dot on top. City, city. Now that isn't across the board. That replacement doesn't take place everywhere. It's only in certain selected words.